Well, they told me for the beginning, since the camera's there, I should turn around for the beginning for the audience at home. Hello, but I'm really going to have my back this way, and I'm going to be moving around a little bit. And for the most part, you'll be able to see the panel. My name is Malik Singleton, and I'm happy that we're able to pull this panel together. I had an idea for a topic for WPCampus, but the only problem was I was like, I don't know anything about it. So let's pull together some other folks who can really talk about it. Really what I want to do is just kind of start off the bat with some quick introductions. And actually, hello folks, welcome. So we'll do some quick introductions, left to right or right to left for the audience.
You're gonna have to point. Point to somebody.
We'll start with Robin.
Yeah, okay, that one I know.
Hi, I'm Robin Smail. I am a user experience designer at Penn State.
I'm Donna Talarico. I'm an independent content writer.
I'm Jeremy Feltz. I'm a WordPress engineer at Washington State University and also starting a web agency.
And I'm Shelley Keith. I'm senior digital strategist at Modern Tribe.
Great. There is about 100 years experience between them.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And so with that, I mean,
we're on camera.
Exactly. With so much of that, I think one of the first things we want to do is looking here is we've got tons of stories probably in the room, and I just want to, with the topic in mind, kind of good anecdotes. Just tell me, sometimes you don't really hear enough of the happy stuff. You only hear from people when there's a horror story, but I know we've got a little bit of both. And I don't know, maybe just throw out something that is a good example of how some, what you've had to take credit for, be accountable for, something that jumps out at you in your 100 years.
Wow, that's thank you very much. I'll start, and it's nothing that I can take credit for. I like working in higher ed, certainly not for the pay per se, but it's the people. We have amazing people that do amazing things, and they do it with a lot of heart. I think one of the happiest things is when people start getting acceptance letters, and they start tweeting, the students start tweeting that I got in, this is great. There's such excitement there, and that is very fulfilling. That does make me happy. It makes me happy that they want to come to our institution and for the next chapter of their journey.
Okay.
I have a happy story that I'll share, kind of was brought back to light from Robin's accessibility presentation. But outside of the higher ed stuff, I run a literary magazine and we use WordPress. But one of the neat things is how I can pull stuff from conferences like this with a literary magazine. And we published a writer who is lost his vision due to diabetes and some other medical issues. And so we were really careful to make sure that we used, we tagged the image, and I checked up on him after to make sure that everything was fine with his story, and he thanked me for sharing such a beautiful picture to go with his story. And that just really hit me here because we published nonfiction, so it was a personal story to him, and that we chose a picture that he could see. That really meant a lot.
Cool. That's beautiful. And maybe might have to just flip this one for the second half of the two-part question.
Oh,
all right. And Shelley, in your talk yesterday, you did talk a lot about, some of the things some of the ways in which you've had to, I guess, do some damage control in your, some of the projects you've had to run, and just, lessons learned.
So, I'm just gonna skip you.
Oh.
That's okay.
Go right ahead.
I think, from that perspective, thinking about horror story, which this isn't so much of a horror story, but I think that from having to work with a lot of different people and a lot of different types of people in higher ed environment, being highly democratized the way it is, one of the hardest things for someone who's coming at who's approaching things from a strategic perspective, is often dealing with the I want it the way I want it, and I want it right now because I saw it in another institution, and I don't care about the rules and regulations and what's accessibility mean, and those kinds of things. Or I want it this color, even though we're strictly forbidden from using chartreuse. Those kinds of things, and navigating that kind of those situations and putting building yourself up into a position where you have some ability to do that. So I think that has been kind of a consistent thread throughout my higher ed experience, and it has sustained me nicely having moved into the agency side.
You also do a really good job of educating people that are difficult. Not that I would know.
I absolutely, it's one of my favorite things to turn that around and to see that turn around.
And Jeremy, I think even in your talk, you talked a little bit about something similar.
Well, I have a real horror story.
Excellent.
From the tech side. My worst moment was we do all of our authentication through SSO, through LDAP with our Active Directory. And so I had written a WordPress plugin that did all of that, connected everything worked fine. I never tested how IT's AD server would respond if you passed a blank password. And at the time, apparently it just said, it returned a response that was like truthful somehow. And so my plugin would say, okay, you're authorized. So there was a period for a good week or so, I think. I don't remember the exact time frame, where if you had entered in an empty password for any valid user account, it would work.
I love the look on Gilson's face.
That's how I felt. So I went through, so luckily every bot in the world that scans for user IDs finds the WordPress user ID with a dash in it. Ours had dots in it, so nobody ever tried. But I scoured a week of log files to look for any attempts, and there was nothing there, and so I kind of signed
Wow, horror story with a happy ending.
That's terrifying.
But with 1,000 years of experience in the room, there's got to be somebody out here who's got something that qualifies as either. Yeah, brave.
Oh, come on, people. It's the end of the.
No one wants to admit it.
I will pick somebody out of the audience.
Yeah.
We're not afraid.
Eeny, meeny.
Yeah, exactly. All right. No one wants, because we're being recorded. If we weren't being recorded.
Oh, we're being.
All right.
Wait, we're being recorded. I gotta go.
I can share one.
Yeah.
Yay!
Don't accidentally change the file permissions on your plugins directory. Because on your multi-site install of 350 websites, because everything just kind of stops. But WordPress is really helpful. When it can't see a plugin anymore, it thinks it's not there, so it removes it from the database.
Oh.
So all of the different sites had kind of different plugin activated, and some of them had some special ones, some of them didn't. That just went away.
That's not helpful.
Yeah.
That's
Thank you.
WordPress is like, look, I'll clean this up. I'll clean this up for you. I will take care of this. I will just say you don't have any plugins.
You're welcome. You are welcome.
Oh, and do that during the day, during registration. That's that much for free.
Is that what happened the year I started grad school?
All right. Well, I want to get a sense of, just how organized this process might be for some of us. Maybe for some of us, it's just like, hey, yeah, I have ideas that I think I want to implement. Or is this really kind of baked in to your workflow and your work group? What would you say? Is it, kind of based on these two questions, is it something that you really have an organized process around? Or it just kind of comes up when it comes up?
I'll be honest, I actually can't answer this. For Penn State, the studio that I work with actually is, we do proof of concept. We do future forward application work. And so ours is very much sort of shoot from the hip, let's see what happens. And then if we can get it to work, then test it to see if we can break it. So I unfortunately, future proofing, it's much more for us. What can we blow up? What can we turn on it? What can we turn on a dime? How can we innovate on something in order to be able to use it in teaching and education?
I approach it because I'm not a developer, so I kind of approach it from the business process perspective and 20 years of experience, and it tends to be, for me, it tends to be very much about standards compliance, semantic markup, smart database structures, and planning for this is not in itself going to last forever, and it's going to have to continue to grow or move or flex. But I'm a strategist in an agency now, and I deal with very large projects for very large businesses. So and higher ed a lot, and so there's a lot of conversation that I have around. Let's talk about the long-term plan for that and structure what we're doing so that it can iterate into what you're doing, or what your goals are, or the institutional, plans, whatever. So that's kind of how I tend to approach it. And when I was on the, one-man army kind of situation in higher ed, where I was doing all of the things by myself, it was absolutely, how little can I touch this in the future? How can I make this easier on myself? How can I be kind to future me?
Yeah, I mean, that is
a good way to
I wasn't always, I had some moments where I didn't really know.
Team structure has to play a role in how many cooks in the kitchen and the thing. In fact, Jeremy, in your talk, you made an interesting point. You said our universities are really, they were founded sometimes hundreds of years ago, and they'll go on for hundreds of years, and the roles we play at our schools is really only for a small period of time, but we have to play a role that will impact the future.
Yeah. So I don't know if I have a process, but I think it's whatever I do is maybe strategic and subtle. So if I identify something like, say, Gutenberg, that I know is going to be coming one day, then I'll make sure that in our Slack channels, I'm dropping articles that talk about, web components or this, or in conversations, I'll just casually mention this, knowing in my head that one day we're gonna have to start working on this. So getting that language familiar throughout all of our different groups before we say, now let's actually go do it.
Yeah, true.
Starts helping.
Yeah. So where do you feel you're kind of ahead of the curve, and where do you feel you might be playing catch up? I see the brains turning. I see the brain, but again, we're being recorded. Like, do I admit it all?
Well, again, Penn State's huge, and we have 23 campuses, so it's not like this is coordinated. It's clearly we are definitely a subset. That being said, a lot of times, even when we help other people, there are some things where when you're trying to get ahead of the curve, there's, again, you think about accessibility, you think about, all right, what's going to be important? And you're really talking about how can I put, we've got a redesign that we're doing right now. And the question is, how can we make, write the content once and then reuse it multiple times? How can we structure this site so that it's got strong, valid markup, that it doesn't have shiny things that are going to break, kill the carousel and not kindly. So there are certain things that I think we know that order and strategy are helpful. And then we can play around the open pieces and say, okay, how can we work this? But really, Shelley's right. When you're trying, especially on web design, app development is a little bit different for us. But when we're looking at this web design, you don't want to redesign every 3 years, people. I mean, I don't know about you, but I've got other things on my plate. Thank you very much. But people need to be able to. Ideally, we still iterate, right? We continue, but it's a live document. And if I could only get people to realize that it's a live document, and that as such, we should continue to improve and continue to update instead of suddenly saying, whoa, nobody's touched this for 5 or 6 years. That's a bad thing.
So like Lori always says, your website is not a project because projects have an end date.
Yep.
Right. Well, it's not even just for technical and dev things. I would say even content strategy, you don't always want to have to keep revisiting things that aren't necessary to revisit, right?
Yeah.
Right. I think there's a huge thing to be said for the idea of getting ahead of the curve in terms of thinking out the long-term business strategy or the expectation of use for a piece of content or for types of content, and giving yourself a leg up and some flexibility to deal with the changes that are inevitably going to come to that information or the different ways it's going to be used eventually, and kind of think ahead. And even if it's not part of the scope of something right now, like
It could be.
it totally could be. My projects turn on a dime. So, we should here. I had this brilliant idea that's now 6 months more work on this piece of content or content type. So that for me, and I think that for me, with what I do, getting ahead of the curve tends to be very much about educating stakeholders.
Yep.
Even in dealing with Fortune 500s now, and I'm finding the exact same scenario, you guys, with corporate and higher ed. We're all in the same boat. We've got people in positions of power who don't have the experience and the background in the same way that we do, who are absolutely needing the guidance, making good decisions and thinking through stuff. I'm having daily conversations with a major corporation right now where they're like, I didn't think of that. That's genius. And I'm like, you can continue to say that to me.
It is okay.
That works for me.
Exactly. I know that, I've prepared some of these, just a couple basic questions, but the way our conversation is going, I think we're even jumping around to a few other ones, but so we can even touch back on some of those. But what do you think in doing this, how much, does this make you have to be too much of a control freak, or does it mean that you have to kind of leave a little wiggle room, and do your higher ups kind of have a sense of what your vision might mean? Like, related to this question, is there some room for failure? Do you kind of feel like you have to really have some control over all that planning?
I'm a bit of a control freak. Shut up, Chris. But even then, I have managed to luckily always land myself in environments where I had a little bit of flexibility and some opportunity to kind of, I wouldn't say necessarily, fail up, but experiment a little bit and figure out maybe what was going to work. And I absolutely, I've got a list of failures as long as my arm, but none of them, I managed to prevent myself from having any failures that were catastrophic.
Sure.
Because I got to kind of experiment and figure it out. And I've always had really good colleagues, and at Tribe, it's nice because we're a really collaborative group. So there's a lot of support there.
Yeah. As far as for me, where failing and where I experimented a lot was not so much on the web, because that's not my background. I'm more social and content, but just with social media promotions and trying new things and like little one-time events, and just to kind of gauge things with your audience and various constituents, and
They
whether
might
it's
call
using
that
hashtag. So yeah, just like fun stuff like that, using live tweeting during events, or I went to a regional web meetup once, and I think it was University of Delaware, but to get more students to live tweet during events, they blocked off seats as called tweet seats. So then I tried that at eTown, and so just little things like that.
Yeah.
So less off the web, but more on the social.
Sure.
Higher ed tends to be a pretty great environment for that, because there's so few resources and people and money that the pace is different than it is in other places. So you kind of, it's a place where generally you have a little bit of room to learn and grow and break stuff.
Yeah, that's good. I used to work in media, but it's like the news media, there's just, they don't like that.
No room
It's
to
not the
breathe.
same culture.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're like, get stuff right, get it out.
It's really hard to learn in that environment, right? Because you're not allowed to try anything.
Right.
I think it's also helpful too, understanding the concept of failing is not necessarily bad.
Yes.
And being in a group where you're allowed to fail is a real gift. So it helps us learn.
You have to help foster that.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
That's very true. It is definitely part of the environment, the group, the people that you're collaborating with, the team. That's a big part of it.
Well, the more that organization gives you room to fail, then the more that you end up being empowered to take advantage of that. And it's kind of the
Right there.
cycle.
Yeah.
I came to each of your talks, and I wrote down a lot of words I was hearing and some of the other ones that I had in my mind. I think it's important to kind of have a sense of a shared vocabulary that, comes up in this, in these kinds of efforts. And Robin, you brought up a great word, which was retrofitting. There's just, and of course, Shelley talked about governance, and I came to this just thinking about road mapping. Some of them might overlap. Some of them, might be things that we do more or less of. I just kind of want to, I'm just going over those just to kind of get a sense of some of the real takeaways I had from you guys' talks. I was thrown onto a group at NYU that was all about change management. I learned a lot, but it was funny. Nobody else really wanted to be part of that committee.
I will tell you that I love change management in terms of course correction and really trying to move people forward. There are times that a project can get really mired in, well, we weren't supposed to do that. Well, no, we need to do that. Well, is it on it? Do we have a change form? Do we have? Well, no, but what's that? And I think that anything that can sort of help guide you forward is good. I mean, the problem with things like retrofitting and relaunch and redesign is the RE part of that. And what that means is that you didn't either do it right the first time, or things have changed enough that you have to do it again. You have to improve, and the concept is always to iterate and improve and do something, whatever you're focusing on to improve is great. And again, when you look forward, easier to plan your work and say, we're going to include this. We're going to be proactive. We're going to include thinking about accessibility. We're going to include thinking about people who have barely any signal at all. And so they strip everything out just so that they can access basic information. Retrofitting is bad. That's backwards. We're trying to move forward, and that's, and I think a lot of the other words that you have there help you get there.
Yeah. Yeah, the change management process was, like I said, I learned a lot from that, which turned out to be kind of interesting, especially at a place as huge as NYU. So some of the words that I know that we're dealing with, a lot of us right now, I want to kind of get a sense of, have you been sort of forced to prioritize? Have you been, you had to do, push one in front of the other? Or?
We juggle all three. Accessibility, security, and privacy. I mean, you can't be higher ed and not think about privacy, nor, again, hello, Penn State, you have to be aware of security. And I think just being human, you've got to be cognizant of accessibility. And I think each one is very important. I don't think any one comes before the other. I think that they are three pieces that you really have to be empowered to move forward on. You can't be reactive. You have to be proactive on those.
Institutionally, we've been pretty reactive, unfortunately.
Yeah.
We prioritize.
See, I'm telling you.
It's a horrible way to live, but we prioritize these accessibility because we got an OCR complaint 2 years ago. And then privacy now because of the GDPR, where people finally realized, so even though at the
it does apply.
Right, exactly. At the grassroots level, people are always working on this, but at an institutional level, it doesn't have the same weight until some government force says,
Until something says, uh-oh.
yeah, this is
We
going to
should-
cost
maybe we should look at this.
Right.
Even overseas government.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, we can do a little lightning here. Kind of, like I said, I came to each of you guys' talks. I really was, getting a sense of kind of the areas you cover. What do you find? What are you changing right now?
Career.
Yeah, career.
Okay then.
No, not changing careers, just jobs. But
I wrote this before you got to
Right.
the part of this.
so changing now, like at the university, kind of in what we're doing, I think our big focus right now is how we're going to deal with the Gutenberg world when it finally happens. And in more important ways than that, I think our entire web team started focusing a while ago more on the concept of blocks as part of content rather than whole designs and things. And so I know in the next iterations that the university is going to make, it'll be more around components that can
Modules.
be kind of fit in different places, and which hopefully future-proofs even that ongoing, because you can start to, if you have to redesign something, you're redesigning a smaller piece and not the entire thing.
You don't want to take everything down and do it all together?
Again.
Read. How are users changing? Are there different things that people are starting to use that we are going to have to react to, or what is it that you're doing?
I think the term user is changing to people. I think there's a more human component here that I think we're trying to really humanize the fact that what we're doing does not live in a vacuum. We interact with people. I think that the things that you brought up before, security, privacy, accessibility, not only are they important, but as worldwide, people have been failed by large institutions that dump, their secure information. They get hacked, and suddenly you're finding your email on the dark web. And
Stop using me as an example.
stop bringing me hero, right? So I think that the people that use what we are dealing with, they're getting tired of not being able to find things. They're tired of not being able to do what they need to do to move forward, and not being taken seriously in terms of, this is my data, it's personal, it's something that I have to leverage, and when you take it from me, when it's spread open, then we have nothing to leverage. I have nothing. So I think that people are becoming more insistent about their rights and their expectations. I think we're going to continue seeing that. Just like I think we should be responding appropriately to inclusivity and getting becoming more open in that sense, because users aren't going to go away. People aren't going to go away. Yeah, transparency is such a word.
It is a word. It's a word that means things.
But it's not a real word.
It is not a real word. All right, it's not real transparency.
Donna, how do you think our jobs are going to be changing? Future forward.
Yeah, I think they're just ever evolving in this world. And I think like right now I'm a full-time independent content writer, and I think I am able to exist because so many institutions don't have that expertise in-house. So I think that's where we might see some growth, is people realizing that they need writers again and somebody to create this content. So I'm going to get out of it. I'm going to have to go back and work for an institution again. But I think that, content creators right now are really just relegated to magazine writer or PR writer, but we need writers for the web, and there's just so much outsourcing done, and you can't just throw words together. People need to write for accessibility
and a strategy. Have a strategy. Yeah. And
I'm sorry, I don't understand what that word is.
It's strategery. Sorry.
strategery. And to kind of go back to the future proofing, though, so much of what you see to use what Shelley said, to be kind to your future self with content. We just throw stuff up there willy-nilly that we don't realize it's going to be out of date in like weeks or months. So even just knowing that you need to write evergreen content. So I think our jobs are going to change. People who are writers might need to be writers. Our writers need to learn to be designers and infographics with visual content. So I think we're just going to be doing a lot more diverse stuff in our jobs as content creators.
So I really like that.
Need more hats.
Yeah.
Still keeps human element. We hear about things that technology is going to take change from us, not take away, but certain tech is going to be able to do certain things we do now, but we're going to have to maybe shift into thinking about then what does that mean? What will we do as a result? Shelley, I don't think Shelley likes this question.
Get off my lawn. No. I'm the person that kind of avoids like new emerging technology until there's a little bit of proven going on. I'm not like technology averse by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm also not like bleeding edge. It gets on my nerves. And I could say that relative to my background and what I do now, and talking about specifically the concept of future proofing, like I got a list. Like, don't jump on the next big thing, because it just makes life much more difficult if it doesn't pan out, right? That's not saying don't experiment. It's not saying don't test stuff and learn and reach and figure out if it's going to work, but figure out if it's going to work for the goal that you have for whatever it is you're trying to do, before just chasing the next ooh shiny.
Yeah.
Because you don't have the resources of the people to do that if you're in higher ed. It's just not real.
And I think in your role then, or for a lot of us, depending on what role we play, we might have to be the police of that.
Oh God, all the time.
Right, and
It's
because
very
there are going to be other people in our institutions who are going to come at us and say, I got something shiny that I want to do. In fact, that word came up.
That's education, man. That is so totally education, the people who bring that up.
So my issue with that is if you're not today already doing strategic, intelligent things that are working, then an ooh shiny is not going to solve that problem for you. It's not going to fix it. So getting your content together, getting your architectures together,
Back to
being
basics.
smart, like super back to basics. If you are trying to accomplish something significant and lasting and intentional at your institution, then do that, and you already have the toolbox for it. You don't need to chase expensive, shiny, time-consuming, glitter, which never goes. Like it has long-lasting implications when you jump into something that doesn't pan out or doesn't yield the way that you need it to. So always be thinking about what is the goal, and the goal can never. And I mean, I get it that sometimes it is, but it's not shutting up a stakeholder is not a valid goal.
What is it? Strategy before goals leads to tragedy?
Something like that.
No, sorry. It's tools before strategy leads to tragedy. That's it.
All right.
That's the one we go for.
I like it.
Sorry, real quick, to piggyback on that, because this is a fun topic.
Oh, I could bitch about this all day.
So before we talked about the prioritization of accessibility and security and privacy, and often this shiny new tech is something that's, I mean, not to harp on Silicon Valley, but it's coming out of a place that doesn't have those priorities.
Yes.
So as a public institution, or private institutions too, when you're trying to use this new technology, those priorities clash a lot.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's what.
I think there's one, I won't call it shiny, but there's one new piece of tech that we all can't avoid. And so here comes some new tech.
Oh, I'm hitting the sand. I'm like, no.
So I want to, from our, whatever familiarity we have with it already, is what's it, I don't know, what's Gutenberg kind of doing, what's it solving, what's it
The answer to that question is no.
Right
now. Yeah. Well, you heard from Lacey. Move on.
We take audience responses. I mean, we're all planning, we're preparing, but what's the kind of foundational, long-lasting reasoning, or is Automatic out there listening to us too right now?
Is Gutenberg prepping for the millennium, the 2000? Is that Y2K? Yeah, the Y2K.
No, well,
Is
it depends.
it sort of similar?
It could be.
Okay.
It could just be
Just
smoother
checking.
than we all assume.
Sure,
But
sure.
so I think Matt Mullenweg has summed this up, at least in the way that he understands it, and I think it's a pretty good summary. The current editor in WordPress has been around now for, I think it's 10 years ago is when TinyMC was introduced to WordPress. So that's cut it for 10 years.
Sure.
Although we've seen in the last few years, page builders and things like TinyMC isn't cutting it anymore. If WordPress doesn't adapt, it starts to, that 31% starts downtrending all of a sudden and disappears. So in building Gutenberg, the goal is this is the editor for the next 10 years. So in a way, Gutenberg itself is probably trying to help us future-proof, while at the same time introducing this hurdle that we're going to have to get over in the meantime.
Oh, so that's a yes.
It's a maybe.
It's a maybe.
It's a maybe. It's a
There's a lot of ambiguity.
Right. There's a lot of ambiguity.
kind of, sort of maybe.
Well, we're talking about, just like you mentioned, page builders. So I want to kind of get a sense is, how is it working for those of us who still might be a little confused about, how is it going to work with existing page builders? Is it going to kind of push them aside a little? I don't know. From what we know so far, how does Gutenberg really?
Has anybody built a page builder?
Yeah.
From a development standpoint, there are ways to transition between the page builder and the Gutenberg interface.
Okay.
From a reality standpoint, I'm not sure what all of the page builders are doing. I know some, like I think it's Beaver Builder, right at the beginning started working on Gutenberg to make sure that this is a business opportunity for them. If they do it the right way, then nobody has to change anything. I'm sure there are going to be others that it's going to be difficult. So.
I heard from ASAP as well. They're doing very exactly what Beaver Builder did, jumped on it early.
I want to say the Pivots plugins actually had a good blog post about the top 10, top 15 page builders and how they, you downloaded them all, put them in test development, turned them all on, and found out what happened when Gutenberg was active, just to see what happened. If I remember what that blog post is, or can find it over in Slack.
Great.
That's a good answer to that.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that there's probably still some of these ideas up in the air. All right, well, here's a wide open. I'll say that the reason I'm kind of asking this is there's a book I'm reading right now. It's about content strategy, and it's about just how we're sort of how content is a focus and that's apart from like websites. Like your content ought to be able to transfer and feed out, and not everyone's going to experience your content through a web interface. That's what was on my mind. I just want to kind of get a sense from you guys about some of the technology that's out there that you think is really going to impact us in higher ed.
Oh, and everybody looks at me. Okay, so to be fair, the parent organization that I work for, believe me, I'm watching the time. The parent organization, that I'm working with is Teaching and Learning with Technology. So we continually are the people that Shelley hates, because we're the people who take a look at emerging technology. We try and figure out how, we are the people who kick the tires, right? And hopefully it gets through us, whether it's a yay or nay, and then, somebody's actually done something with it before it gets over to Shelley, and she's like, what is this?
Now you know all crabby about it. To be fair, though, I don't hate new technology.
No, I know.
I just get really annoyed at the fact that we try to fix strategic long-term problems
Where
who's shining
yeah.
instead of dealing with the tools that we already have at our disposal, like good content and decent information architecture and good calls to action and useful things that people are going to interact with that actually help them solve problems and not just present it to them in a new way. I mean, I could take them.
I will redirect here. But in all honesty, we're looking at VR and AR. We're doing work there. I mean, the maker move is huge, and we have a lot of work in that area. Empowering students to work with multimedia more and get hands-on approach. We have a lot more labs where they can get a feel for technology, 3D printing. So we're doing an awful lot of that, and you know, that's sort of an aside in terms of higher ed tech per se, but honestly, these are the kind of skills and the knowledge that students need to know about, because they will most likely be dealing with it when they graduate, they get out into the world, and they need to know about it. So I know that's what we're working on. You know, your mileage may vary.
I think from like I have the Marcom background, so I think in that perspective, I think it's still all about storytelling, and it's finding the right medium for the right stories, not saying, oh, we need a blog, what will we put on it? But instead just looking for that cohesive page. Yeah, we do. We need a Facebook page and a Snapchat.
Okay. Yeah.
But like cohesive storytelling and branding, and I think it kind of starts there, and then figuring out what's the right place for it. And I think, you know, we used to just be, hey, PR, let the media tell our story, but it's about telling our own story. So maybe that's developing internal newsrooms, maybe that's blogging, all of that sort of.
Yeah, that's part of Shelley's talk.
Yeah.
I'll put on my tinfoil hat. But from
Join me.
also from the marketing perspective, I have a specific phone conversation in my head that I had with an ad tech executive or person, I don't know if it's executive, when our admissions group was going to put a retargeting pixel, which is the worst word in the world.
See, I'm telling you.
And then he got almost giddy about the amount of information that they could tell us about a student, like where they live. This is like somebody received a flyer in the mail, and they know when they visit a website, and they know when they went to Facebook. And so that stuff, I can imagine, especially emerging technologies, is kind of opposite of that privacy part. And if we aren't careful, you know, we're treating our students like incoming money. So we want to know where that money's coming from rather than people.
Thank you.
Yes.
Back to the horror stories.
Yes. Back to the horror story.
You know,
It is Friday the 13th.
This might even be a question for automatic. I don't know with you know, I guess how is WordPress, I guess, going to sort of, we talked a little bit about just Gutenberg itself, but just WordPress overall. When some of the technologies like we're getting into, just like Robin, you mentioned some of the AR, VR, some of the buzzwords we're hearing. What does that do for WordPress as a platform? Where does it?
I'll go first. So WordPress historically, I think, has done a pretty good job of identifying emerging technologies, waiting until they settle a little bit, and then deciding how to implement them in a way that's usually good for people.
Sure.
So Joe McGill, who used to work at Washington University, while he was here, worked on the responsive images team, which has done that put responsive images, which is a new spec, into WordPress, which as soon as WordPress shipped that week, improved the web in general, just like that. And a similar story with GDPR. Europe has decided privacy is an issue. US is soon going to decide privacy is an issue. And WordPress now has an interface in there that is ahead of the game, probably ahead of many other people in the publishing world. So I think that's how WordPress continues to adapt.
Shelley, I think in your talk, you talked a little bit about this. Clearly vision, that last word there, vision has to be part of what we all bring to, you know, with our experience. But we've got these stakeholders. What is it that, you know, the policing again? How is it that you're able to sort of make sure your vision can happen?
So my answer to that, it's a little tongue-in-cheek, is pander to your audience. Pandas. It is a little tongue-in-cheek, but the reality is I align very closely with Donna's discussion of storytelling, and I think it's incredibly important. My entire 4-hour workshop was about telling your story and making sure that you're the one telling the story and that you're tailoring the story to the audience that you're talking to at the time, and that in relation, like, it's relevant because when you're standing in front of the President's Council, when you're standing in front of the Board of Directors, when you're working on getting budgets, when you're trying to get faculty members on your side to get them moved over, when you're trying to get buy-in for this crazy accessibility idea, when you're trying to support users up and elevate them and empower them to do good work, it's all about the relationship and the story that you're telling them and making sure that you understand what that thing is that's going to get them to go, oh, yes, let's do that. I'm on your side. You're going to solve my problem for me. So it always comes back to people.
Yeah, I agree with relationships and being visible on campus, and just so people know that you're out there and they know that you're working for the same team. I think that's important.
I think for our audience at home, we're at time. I've got, I know that this has been a good conversation. I don't want to hold anybody up from getting beer.
That's also how you get buy-in.
Clearly, 10 and 5 signs that went up. But I want to thank you guys. There's obviously we can keep going on. There's a couple more questions here. Ultimately, what we all have to take away from this is that we've got a lot of work to do on our home fronts. So good luck.
All right.